right, it's time for the bear autopsy scene. Mesmerizing. It would have been amazing on screen, on the big screen, in a Rambo film, the fifth Rambo film. It almost was. It almost was. This is from James Byron Huggins' Hunter, optioned by Sylvester Stallone, for Rambo V, The Savage Hunt. If you are a Rambo fan, get this book now. It's only $6. You can get it on Kindle as well. New on Kindle. Here is a 10-page taste to help you make that decision and go pick out this wonderful, wonderful piece of literature. So here we go. Slashed and disemboweled, the mammoth brown-black carcass with protruding white ribs lay before Hunter in the somber gloom. Just in case you're wondering, Hunter would have been Rambo. It's not a far stretch when you think of like Rambo 4, the boatman. They called Rambo the boatman. The only person who mentions Rambo by name is Arthur Marsh. One time in the film when he comes to get Rambo to go find the missionaries. So let's start that again. Slashed and disemboweled, the mammoth brown-black carcass with protruding white ribs lay before Hunter in the somber gloom. He stood motionless, measuring the great grizzly's size. Judge it to be close to half a ton. Glistening black claws at the end of incredible huge forelegs lay still. Its fangs were fixed in a frozen roar. Its open eyes were glazed by the vicious impact of a sudden and unexpected death. Circling the area, Hunter had easily discovered the creature's talon tracks, the ones left after it had killed the grizzly. Almost immediately he had known what had happened, but had done a careful reconnaissance to make sure that the thing, whatever it was not laying close to the dead grizzly as a tiger would often do. All around the area he found the grizzly's tracks, half-eaten bushes, and trampled berries. Then, after he was certain that he and the team were alone, Hunter angled carefully back to examine the corpse. Clearly, reading the overlaying tracks, Hunter could see that it had been a ferocious fight. Not long, certainly, but ferocious. Clearly a confrontation of two creatures, each of whom struck with horrific force. And for a moment Hunter remembered the two Siberian tigers who had fought to the death as he rolled between them. It confirmed to him that the more powerful the enemies were, the shorter the fight. The grizzly, normally reluctant to challenge a creature of equal size, had put up a formidable defense. Its claws were caked in dried blood, confirming Hunter's suspicion gleaned from surrounding leaves that the creature he was tracking could indeed be wounded, and had been. And somehow it gave him comfort. No, he thought to himself, it wasn't unkillable. In a surreal silence, Hunter bent and froze, then removed his knife to examine the bear's wounds. When he heard what could have been the soft nestling of a bird's wings so close. He followed almost silent, approaching steps, and knew that it was before he shook his head. Smiling and turning, he angled his head toward the gloom and waited, but there was no more movement. Then softly, in a voice no human being could have heard if they had been standing 6 inches away, he spoke into the darkness. "Ghost, come here, boy." A second later, a pair of glistening black eyes and a huge anvil-like head, wide muscular shoulders beneath, silently parted the leafy black ferns. Ghost didn't move as his darkened animal gaze darted around the torn and trampled glade, rich with the scent of blood. From Hunter's aspect alone, he seemed to recognize that there was no battle to be fought. Hunter smiled and shook his head. Then he turned to examine the gutted carcass of the grizzly. Its intestines, liver, and heart were gone, and the massive injury wasn't slashed into the massive chest. It was torn, as if inflicted in some demoniacal killing rage. Then Hunter examined the great bear's huge neck and head and found a large indentation in the inch-thick skull. Gingerly he ran his hand over the depression, attempting to feel through the armor-like fur. Before he was certain, part of the grizzly's skull had been crushed into powder, slightly larger than a man's fist. The area around jagged slices of bone beneath Hunter's probing grasp before he leaned back, shaking his head in amazement that approached disbelief. Hunter was accustomed to death. It was the way of the wild, the way of his life, and he himself could kill efficiently and without emotion when necessary. And if he hadn't possessed that long, hard discipline and will and skill, the forest would have long ago claimed him, for in the end, always the strongest survive. Reminds you of First Blood, doesn't it? Reminds you of him remembering First Blood, doesn't it? Anyway, he knew that a grizzly would eat anything, plant or animal or fish or bark or even rotten meat, to sustain its great bulk. Nor did it suffer any adverse effects from the combination. Grizzlies were quite simply gigantic garbage disposals, which is why they rarely challenged large animals. They simply didn't need such quantities of meat when the entire forest was alive with plenteous sustenance. Reaching out with the Bowie knife, Hunter made a large incision in the stomach, and turning his face from the gastric vapors released, methodically pulled out 5 handfuls of half-digested berries and the shredded, bony remains of at least 6 fish, all eaten within the last 24 hours. The bear had obviously been gorging itself, as bears habitually did in the late summer and fall, to produce the huge layers of fat that would sustain them through hibernation in the harsh winter. Hunter knew that it would have eaten omnivorously for another 2 months before it bedded down in what most called hibernation, but which was really little more than a long and often interrupted sleep. Even with the prospective foldings of fat, it would awaken daily to meander it in its den for warmth. It would often clean itself or even spend hours staring into the snow to alleviate boredom, waiting and watching for the first signs of spring, just as it would stoically endure hunger as its body began utilizing the fat for sheer survival. Hunter knew what blow had probably killed the beast, though he found it difficult to believe, and despite his resolute courage, Hunter felt his chest tighten, his skin felt chilled, and the hairs along his arms and neck seemed to rise. He had been gauging this creature's strength all along, but not yet had he seen any act that could approach this. This was monstrous. This was something he had never seen and never imagined. What had been done, this had no predator. What had alone this stood at the top of evolution, whatever it was, stood where even man himself was simply food, a puny, dying thing. Unmoving, raising his face only, Hunter stared into the distant forest and searched, knowing he would find nothing. Deep within, he knew a semblance of the fear he had felt many times, but this time it was joined by something else, something he refused to accept for recognized, because he knew it would make him weak. Hunter stood slowly, his brow hardening beneath his ragged black mane, as his blue eyes narrowed and hardened degree by degree, until they were as opaque as a leopard crouching before an attack. Some instinct he had long ago came to trust told him battle was here, and there was no escape. It was instinct, or more, that he had come to know to be true. Then he felt Ghost beside him, the great wide shoulders rising almost to his hips. "Let's go, boy," Hunter ruffled the wolf's neck and hair. "We've got some bad news. for our friends. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed tonight's excerpt. Till next time, or till the next excerpt, I'm your host, Matt, aka Coon, and thank you for following us down this long road that is Rambomania. You at home, you make all the difference. And thanks, like always, and once again, and until we thank you again, thanks for watching.